Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another night of iRacing action here on the National Racing Network. My name is Patrick Byrne, and joining me in the booth tonight, as always on these Thursday night shows, is the man behind TWRS, James Watson. Tonight, the stars and cars of the USFPRO Series take on the warm California sun on the streets of Long Beach, where they will face a 20-lap feature event between the concrete walls placed along these city streets. Turn 1 is likely to bring carnage and excitement, as will the rest of this incredible circuit. James, what do you think is going to come tonight?
If it's anything like we've seen, a lot of chaos, especially in Turn 1. And I'm waiting for the stream to pop up on my end, but yeah, we're gonna be in for a whole lot of chaos. It depends on how much chaos we get in the first corner. That'll define how much chaos we get for the rest of the race. You know, if we lose half the field in Turn 1.
Yeah, definitely got to take a look and watch these drivers as they enter Turn 1. It goes from this wide 6-lane highway down to about a lane and a half, as we'll watch Alexander Wesley Hazelworth make the left turn. Oh, as we lost him. Sorry, that wasn't Hazelworth. But we'll watch him make the left turn down into the straightaway through the fountain section. It's just amazing how this track goes from 5 lanes down Shoreline Drive, down the 2 lanes, down 4 lanes here. I believe this is Lakeshore.
I know, that's what makes this track so incredible, is you have a whole lot of space to work with until you don't.
As Hazelworth is weaving back and forth down the back straightaway, trying to get any and all heat into those tires before he takes his first flying lap. Just incredible the precision these drivers need to get around this place. This is one of my favorite road courses, one I have a handful of wins at just through attrition. If you can get the car within millimeters of the outside walls and not hitting them, that is how you go fast around here.
Yeah, it's honestly might be the most stressful track on the service because it's so easy to make a mistake here. Honestly, a lot more than some of the other street circuits like Belle Isle. Like, you have so little room to work with on so many different parts that it's so easy to cause a full-on track blocker.
There we go. Center the graphics up a little bit more for you. Got some new monitors here at the Ohio headquarters of the National Racing Network, and it seems to have screwed with every single graphical setting. Hazelworth there getting within a millimeter of that wall in the turn number 1. Carousel is going to be your current quick time. Carter Lundy, the man, the myth, the legend in all of the iRacing ads, it leads with a shot of his onboard car at this track in this car. He is 10 thousandths of a second off of Carousel's time. Carter Lundy getting off of the racing circuit. Carousel going on his second time lap right now, seeing if he could best his first. Finally, the paint software wants to work. You can see that beautiful Air Alaska scheme on the side of Sam Carousel's number 2 machine.
It's such a nice paint scheme, like you said. Like, it's awesome to see Aurora Borealis at that time of day. This time local entirely within his sim. Yes, I made a steamed ham reference.
I was
It's on
not
here.
expecting to get a steamed ham reference on the broadcast tonight. It's just an Albany thing, but Alexander Wesley Hazelworth, the law firm, going quick time, fully pulling it off the track. Ted Burns now going to be second quick. Carter Lundy not going out the best his time, going to start what looks like in the fourth position. Frankie Wynn coming out, he's going to be fifth quick. Right now on track is going to be the number 9 of Carl Lemke. We'll see if we can get a look with his car. Looks like he has pulled it off as well as soon as I want to see what's going on with him. So we watch Everett Paddock finishing up his lap through the tightest turn in what I think is all of racing, unless you really count Monaco, but they don't really race there. They more parade, so I would consider the final section of this track to be the tightest turn in motorsports. Everett Paddock, now you just watched him come across the line. That is going to be the new quick time. 1 minute, 15 seconds, and 18 1/1000ths. Ted Burns bests him, though. Ted Burns breaking into the 14s with a 1 minute, 14 864. What were you going to say, Watson?
I did not say anything, actually.
Oh. You know, now thinking about it, I think Macau might have an even tighter hairpin than Long Beach.
I would agree with that. However, I think Long Beach is the spicier one because you're going on to the longest straightaway on the track and the start-finish line as well. So the others, you have another slow set of corners right after. You're not going full dumping the throttle, trying not to bin it like you are in this one.
Absolutely. That's a great point you make there. And the other thing about this final hairpin is it's not a passing opportunity, but it also absolutely is. If it's the last lap and it's your last chance to try and get a pass done, you can absolutely try to send it deep. There will almost definitely be carnage, but that's kind of what you get.
Yeah. And that's what makes this track so special, you know, and that's what makes the start so special, watching them barrel out of the hairpin down into the tight turn one. You also get some chaos going into the hairpin when you're going green, because everyone's like, oh crap, we gotta get going, and then everyone goes, suddenly no one's going.
I love all of these scenic shots of Long Beach. You can see just how much elevation change there is. All of the sights of downtown Long Beach, California, just outside of Los Angeles. There's no better place in the world to go racing. This shot right here, it doesn't feel like it's this big of a climb when you're going down on the track. But just looking at it from here, you can see they climb about 25, 30 feet. Here you can see absolutely nothing as you're on the pedestrian walkway. I'm not sure why there's a camera placed here. The fountain, iconic of the modern day Long Beach circuit. They didn't start using this configuration till the early 2000s. Before this, they made a right-hand turn before what is now turn number 1. Really right where pit exit is. They took a right-hand turn and drove basically straight up to Seaside Drive.
And you want to talk about elevation change, nothing compared to how the OG layout of the circuit was when it came to elevation change.
Yeah, it was almost like driving through the streets of San Francisco.
Right? Like, you were looking out for cable cars, it was so insane. That or like the Seattle circuit and the Gran Turismo games.
But that is going to wrap up the qualifying session here. So we'll get you an idea of who is going to be out on track. Once we start to see the drivers start gridding up. There we go. As the field is lining up on Seaside Drive, down the back straightaway. First on the board is going to be Ted Burns. To his outside will be the number 4 machine of Everett Paddock. Behind that pair will be the Law Firm and Sam Carasala. Row number 3 will have Carter Lundy on the inside and Frank Mormon on the outside. Frankie Wynn and Carl Lemkool will be on the row behind them. Jason Miller and Rod Eskew will make up row number 5, and that'll be your top 10. Brian Labarge is going to be the first one outside of the top 10. He's going to be starting 11th. If we don't hit the buttons too fast, I can tell you exactly where they are. Starting in the 12th position will be Mike Holler, Alexander Martin, and Jesse Hodgen will be on row number 7. And AJ Pritchett and Wes Shire making up row number 8. Doesn't look like either of them took time in qualifying. Not sure if either of them are going to make the grid here tonight. As field now making their way off of the starting grid, they're going to go through the final section of this circuit. Into what is normally a parking lot. This section here is a parking lot 364 days of the year, and it can be a parking lot if the field gets stacked up in the final hairpin. You can see just how tight it is from the pace car. Pace car going to make the hard right turn, and we'll dive off and watch the field as they roar down the front straightaway. See, everyone in the back has to race to get up and catch the pack once again. But green flag is out, and away they go. DFR colors of Ted Burns going to lead the field into turn number 1. Everett Paddock in the number 4 right behind him. They start to fan out wide. Looks like 3 wide further back.
Oh, boy.
Looks like just about everyone made it clean and green through there. Safely through the fountain section now. Carter Lundy being very aggressive there in the 4th position. I feel like he was just bump drafting Sam Carasala there out of the fountain section. Backing out onto the original layout of the circuit. Carter Lundy goes deep to the inside, going to swing the car all the way out to the outside, up the uphill climb. Downhill climb, I guess. Looks uphill from the other end. On to the back straightaway of Seaside Drive. He now has a huge gap he has to make up to Everett Paddock. That gap. Oh, and he gets into the wall. He's going to be missing his rear wing there, sliding the car around through the hairpin. Feel like we're going to see him have to dive in the pits, get that repaired. He stays out on track. Not sure how he is maintaining control of that race car with no rear wing.
Right? Maybe it's like a neck code glitch and he still has it, but we can't see
definitely
it.
not. You can see just how much he is sliding that car around.
I mean, this is Carter we're talking about. He slides the car around even if he doesn't have to. Because I think he enjoys it more that way.
There we go. Get the graphics up working again. Carter Lundy still going to be in the 4th position, but you can see just how much time he's losing to the rest of the field. Ted Burns goes across the line. He's going to be your fastest lap so far with a minute 15:3:19. Still well slower of his qualifying time. Carter Lundy going to get eaten up by the rest of the field. Frank Mossman able to get by him. So does Carl Lemkool. Not missing much towards the front of the field. Ted Burns picking up about a 1.5 second gap over Everett Paddock. Going to easily be leading this one.
You know, I gotta say, I'm surprised that Ted is here. I thought for sure that he'd be at the real Long Beach. And Patrick, no, I cannot. I see your message. I cannot.
Field now going to be working lap number 4 of 20. As Ted Burns once again goes fastest lap on the field. He's going to have a minute 15:074, starting to get close to breaking into the 14s. A little bit further back in the field, Carl Lemkuhl going to be fighting very closely with Frank Mossman in the number 15 machine there. Lemkuhl also in the Downforce Racing colors. Very similar paint scheme to the leader, Ted Burns. Trying to break his way up into the top 4 and possibly the top 3, but you can see just how far ahead Ted Burns is, almost the entire length of the back straightaway there.
Yeah, I don't want to say Ted's on cruise control quite yet, but I really don't think he's sweating at this point.
It definitely feels like it. Now, Long Beach is one of those tracks where if you get too settled into a groove, it can very easily bite you. You just kind of get in your rhythm, doing your thing, and pushing 1% harder, 1% harder, 1% harder. And it's not like a track like Brands Hatch or Road Atlanta where you have a little bit of grass or sand where you have to worry about getting into. It's a hard concrete wall. You hit that wall, your night's pretty much over. We saw it happen for Carter Lundy. Just a simple mistake took the rear wing off that machine, and he's fallen all the way back to the 8th position.
Yeah, and a lot of these corners, it feels like the walls just suck you in, like going back onto the back straightaway. Like, if I've ever crashed on this circuit, which I have quite a bit, it's usually right there.
Yeah, Carter Lundy still somehow fighting with Michael Holler, going to be in the 8th position. Losing time to him ever so slightly, though. You can see how he's sliding that car around almost like it's a stock car now that it doesn't have all of that rear downforce. Still making a little bit from the diffuser there, but not a whole ton.
And, like, it's incredible to me because you think that this is, like, the place you need all the downforce and that you can't do anything without it, but apparently not.
I'm having fun just watching him sling this thing sideways.
Right? Like, if there was ever
there we
a
go.
great way to display his incredible talent, that's it.
Ted Burns almost perfectly breaking into the 14s with a minute 14:999. That guy is on cruise control, breaking in the qualifying times. Why don't we go on board with Carter Lundy and just watch him as he drives this thing with no rear wing? You can see how much it's just floating around this circuit and still going inches from these walls.
Yeah, kid's just fearless, man.
Almost full oppo lock there, chasing it out towards the outside wall. I mean, I don't think anyone has ever driven an open wheel car like this. Not one in the modern era with these kind of wings. Maybe Senna did in the 90s, but that's all I can really remember.
Yeah, like, these cars are low downforce, but even then you can't really, still not low enough to be able to do that consistently. So in order to, you just gotta knock off what little downforce you got.
And still putting up decent lap times. I mean, he's the slowest car on track by a margin, by a large margin. His last lap was a 17:558. Let's see what this lap is. It's going to be a 17:277. But Rod Eskew right behind him is only about a half second slower. Rod Eskew just ahead of him now is only about a half second faster. So it's not like he's going all that slow around the circuit. We'll take a look back at leader Ted Burns, as he is just pulling away even further from Everett Paddock, almost extending the gap to 2 seconds, gap dropping now down to about a second and a half. But even he is driving this car absolutely bonkers sideways. I mean, if this is how these cars drive now, I got to get out of the broadcast booth. I got to start running these things.
No kidding.
Carter Lundy still battling very hard with Rod Eskew, though. Without all that downforce, this thing, It has to be faster down the straightaways, although he might have knocked the toe out of it because it does look like he's still losing time to SQ down the straightaway. But putting up a respectable fight. He's not outside of the top 10 yet. Now, there is only one car that puts him right on that kind of edge where he'll be in 10th position. That's going to be the number 11 of Alexander Martin in that purple car you see just behind him. So it looks like an issue for Everett Paddock. He is falling back further and further through this field. Drop back to the the fifth position now, and Frank Wynn is going to be the next guy to get by him, I think. I think there's damage to that car. Yeah, you can see how sideways that thing is driving. Definitely smacked the wall pretty hard at some point. Frank Wynn going to pass him like he's standing still.
Try to see if we can see any front wing damage that might help cause it. I can't quite see.
I don't see any cosmetic damage to that machine. And it looks like he is going to take the dive down pit road. So definitely knocked the toe out, bent the control arm or something. So look back. Rod Eskew extending the gap over Carter Lundy. Carter Lundy still ahead of Alexander Martin, though. Doesn't seem like it's going to be for long, though. Those two cars are going to go side by side, and Martin's going to pass Lundy before they even make it to turn number 1. Lundy's still on the attack, though. Somehow.
No attack, no chance.
Yeah, the next target for Lundy is going to be Brian Labarge, and it's funny that I'm saying the targets are backwards, but yet the car behind him is the car he has to defend from. There's no way he's going to make any passes. There's no way he's going to make himself go forward through this field. He just has to go backwards through it as slowly as possible. As Everett Paddock is now off of the racing surface, Ted Burns has extended the gap over Sam Carasala to over 5.5 seconds. I mean, the only thing Ted Burns has to do now for the last half of this race is don't crash. That's about it.
Yeah, just putt around and stay as far away from any wall. And
the last lap was still a 15 flat, so he's not losing any speed out of that car. And frankly, he can afford to run 16s for the next 5 laps. He can run 15 5s for the next 5 laps, and he will not be losing time to Carasala. Last lap for Carasala was a 15.414. So yeah, he can afford to run 16s. That's only half a second a lap. I mean, hell, I'd like to think that even I can go out there and run 16s for 10 laps.
Heck, I think I could do 16s too. I don't remember my lap times the last time I raced here.
I don't remember lap times ever. All I know is I run a race and it's either good enough to win it or it isn't.
Truer words have never been spoken.
So now Labarge is trying to get by Lundy. Lundy making that car very, very wide. And AJ Pritchett now joining the fight. We've got a 5-car train here behind Lundy.
All aboard the Lundy train.
I feel like this is going to be when you're going down the highway and you're stuck behind a semi-truck that's going 55 miles an hour in a 65, and finally a passing lane opens up, and all of these guys are going to freight train him. They're going to try and go 3 wide down the front straightaway. Lundy puts a stop to that. He is now going to be outside of the top 10, though. Or no, he's not, because Paddock's off the track. Lundy's back up to the 10th position. If you're worried about the battle towards the front of the field, do not fear. You're not missing much, as the gaps between all of the cars up there well over 1 second. This is the closest fight on the racing surface. These 5 cars of Brian Labarge, Carter Lundy, AJ Pritchett, and Wes Shire have the same gap between them. Oh, and throw Jesse Hodgson in there. Throw all of their gaps together. That blanket between first place Brian Labarge here and Hodgson in the back is still tighter than the battle between Ted Burns and Sam Carasala for first and second. That is how dominant a performance Ted Burns is putting on tonight. It's now Pritchett going to get by Carter Lundy. Lundy going to fall back to the 11th spot. All over the gearbox of Pritchett, though. Next car he's going to have to defend from will be the number 14 of Wes Shire. Wes Shire having an unfortunate early end to Tuesday night's TNT Shock Series race. Looked to have a very fast, promising race car at Nashville, and just unfortunately, it was like either lap 1 or 2 that he got taken out of it.
Yeah, very shocking, too.
Ha! I see what you did there.
Yeah, boop, 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 boop. Yeah, I couldn't believe when I saw my relative. I'm like,
I'd like to thank everyone at home for tuning in and staying along with the broadcast. Having some storms here in Northeast Ohio. Unfortunately, the internet gods aren't playing nice tonight, so if you've stuck along for the entirety of this broadcast, I commend you. Doing the best we can with what we've got to make this show look as good as possible for all of you at home. Feel free to check in with any comments, questions, concerns in the comments box here of the live stream. If you do hate the show and hate what we're doing, feel free to send all hate mail to bizzle@nationalracingnetwork.com. We take all of our hate mail very seriously. You will get a ticket number handwritten by me and an apology letter as to why I was wrong and you were correct. Or you might get a smart aleck response back. It depends on how I'm feeling when I read the email. The only way to find out, though, is to send your hate mail to Bizzle, Bizzle, @nationalracingnetwork.com. As we look back towards the front of the field, Ted Burns extending his gap to almost 7 seconds now. He enters the original circuit. We look back to Sam Carasala. He is only exiting the fountain section there. There is a straightaway and a half between these two cars. I don't even see Ted Burns' car at the front of the frame.
I don't either. This is...
Entering Seaside Way, you can see Ted Burns entering the braking zone. Carasala's car just a tiny little speck at the back of the camera frame. Going through the parking lot, approaching the final hairpin. Extending the gap now to 7 1/4 seconds going through the hairpin. He's on autopilot right now.
Yeah.
Frankie Wynn closing the gap, though, on Carl Lemkool. Lemkool making his way up to the 3rd position in those DFR colors. Frank Wynn trying to put himself on the 3rd spot at the podium. We'll go on board with Frank Wynn as he tries to follow along behind Carl Lemkool. See if we can watch him get by. Only going to be 5 laps to go for these drivers as they cross the stripe. Little bit of a slide from Carl Lemke exiting the hairpin, but it seems to have worked out for him. He is extending the gap down this front straightaway. Now the draft is picking in, though. Frank Wynn closing that gap back up. It's going to be just about half a second as they enter the braking zone. Not close enough to make a move, but definitely close enough where he can get to scare him into the fountain section. Just mind-boggling how close these drivers get to those walls in turn number 1.
Yeah, you know, I'm curious to see if he'll be able to make the pass anywhere else. It seems like, especially with these cars, that the only really good passing opportunity is down into turn 1.
Yeah, or at the end of the Seaside Way here.
Yeah, but you're gonna need a mega exit out of the last corner, which is not easy to do, especially since that's the most daunting wall-wise, in my opinion. Like I said, with the millions of times I've died at that specific spot.
A little bit of a better exit by Frank Wynn that time. Gap only 0.3 of a second now. He's well within the draft. Under a quarter of a second now. 0.2 of a second. Peeks to the inside. Decides not to go for it. Gonna wait another lap. But he is right there on the rear gearbox of Carl Lemke. This is your closest fight on the racetrack right now. That's another turn that's deceptively slower than it actually looks. When you approach that corner, it looks like it opens up, gets real wide, but no, it doesn't. You run out of room on the outside really quick. Now this lap, I think he can go for it in the turn number 1 this time, as long as he gets a good run out of the hairpin. Just has to stay right behind Lemke and make sure he exits the hairpin at least as good as Lemke does. Takes a wider entry, going to have a straighter run off. Late to the power though, that allows Lemke to get back up to about half a second. Only going to be 3 laps to go now for these drivers. I don't know if Frankie's going to be able to do it in the 1. Lemke seems to be getting off of the hairpin better just about every time. Frankie's going to have to get creative if he wants to get by the number 9 machine of Lemke.
Yeah, I think that DFR set might have less downforce of what Frankie's on, which is even more impressive that that Ted is absolutely dumpstering everyone.
Yeah, and usually Ted's a driver known for running a little more downforce than all the rest of the field.
No, I always felt it was the other way around.
I think it just depends on the circuit. I know sometimes we've been to like Spa or something, and he seems to lose it all down the straightaways, but in some of the sweeping corners around there, just picks it all right back up. Once again, in the turn 1, no big move made there. This is the battle for the 3rd interview, for the 3rd spot on the podium. If you finish 4th, everyone's going to forget your name, at least for tonight. You got to get on that top, or at least the 3rd spot on the podium. And that is what these drivers are fighting for.
Yeah, everyone wants to be able to talk on the broadcast.
Yeah, who doesn't want to talk to me late at night on a Thursday?
I'm not touching that one. That's what she said.
Ted Burns crosses the stripe. It's going to be white flag. One more lap to go here on the streets of Long Beach. Frankie knows this is his last shot in the turn one. Not going to take advantage. Oh, or he is. They're going to be side by side in the fountain section. Will there be contact between these two cars? Maybe a crossover. Not a chance. Carl Emcool safely defending through the first part of the track. Gets it way sideways. Does Frankie have anything to fight back with? Oh, into the wall goes Frank Wynn. That might be it. We'll take a look at Ted Burns exiting the final chicane, going around Carter Lundy, finally putting him one lap down. Takes the dive to the inside, takes the checkered flag, this Ted Burns. Second place will be Sam Carasala. Third, we have yet to see into the hairpin. It's going to be Carl Emcool easily coming down the straightaway. No contest from Frank Wynn. Carl Emcool is going to be your third place car. Frank Wynn coming home fourth. So we move back to the fifth position. Mike Holler now coming down the straightaway. It's going to be Mike Holler in the sixth position. Rod Eskew going to come home. Mike Holler in the fifth position. Eskew going to come home sixth. Alexander Martin seventh. AJ Pritchett going to come home eighth. Wes Shire ninth. And rounding out your top 10 is going to be Jesse Hodgson. Great race by all of the drivers here tonight. Surprised to see the lack of attrition that usually we do see here at Long Beach. A lot of these drivers probably putting in a lot of practice laps here, making sure to keep themselves off of those concrete retaining walls and doing a damn good job of it, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, like, I'm very impressed with everyone. It just shows the talent level we have in this series, where we only had, like, what, one retirement with Everett Paddock?
Hazelworth did retire very early on. Hazelworth retired on lap number 2, unfortunately.
That's a shame.
Alexa Harris checking in the comments saying, "That's my husband in 7th. Go Alexander." Alexander did a fantastic job tonight. Not sure we've seen him very often here in the USF 2000 Pro Series. Happy to have him come along, though. Put on a great show if this was his first appearance. And looking forward to seeing him come out a couple more times and maybe get himself on the podium. Very tough field to make his way through. I mean, it's a 3,300-something strength of field, so not a bad feat.
No, it's really not.
Ted Burns doesn't burn it down, very peacefully pulls it into the pit lane, and going to call it quits for the night. So, it's going to be Ted Burns coming home your winner easily by 6.5 seconds over Sam Carasala. Carasala 12 seconds ahead of third place. Carl Emcool. Frank Wynn, as you saw, just behind Carl Emcool, fighting very hard in the last stages of the race. Mike Holler going to come home 5th. Rod Eskew 6th. Alexander Martin coming home in the 7th position. AJ Pritchett 8th. Wes Shire 9th. And Jesse Hodgson. You saw him round out your top 10. 11th place will have the driver of the number 8 machine out of New England. It's Brian Labarge. Carter Lundy somehow holding on, only finishing a lap down. You saw him get lapped by Ted Burns on the white flag. Going to come home in 12th position. Very respectable for him. Usually out there fighting for wins. Tonight he was fighting to stay on the lead lap and almost did it. Jason Miller retiring early. He was going to come home in the, Paddock retiring early, coming home in the 13th position. Miller also retiring early, coming home in the 14th position. Frank Mossman and Alexander Wesley Hazelworth, also early retirements out of tonight's race. But why don't we get our drivers lined up for their interviews and ask them what they thought of tonight's show. First up, we'll bring in third place finisher Carl Emkuhl. Carl, you might have been the only driver towards the late stage of this race to actually be racing with another driver, able to keep it in front of Frank Wynn. Were you afraid when he made the dive into that fountain section on the last lap?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was a bit of a self-inflicted dive, I think. I certainly opened the door for him, and he walked right through. But yeah, he definitely kept me honest there.
Kept you on your toes. There was a couple points where I could have sworn both of you guys were smacking off that outside wall. They approach very, very quickly at this track. Is there anything you do as a driver to keep yourself off of them?
Yeah, I have to, think about it a little differently. Tell myself to, it's like, thinking about what the consequences are if you get it a little wrong, right? Like you run a little wide at Silverstone turn 1, and you compromise your turn 2. But if you run long at turn 1 here, you're over. So you really gotta think about how you push.
Yeah, it's a very different style of push. It's more of pushing to precision instead of pushing for raw pace.
Yep.
But you did an absolutely fantastic job of it. I almost want to say you finished first in the P2 class. Those top two guys absolutely ran away with this one, but still an incredible feat, incredible talent out of the whole field tonight. And why don't we get some of your sponsor plugs and thank yous in?
Yeah, big thanks to one of those P1 cars, Ted and Downforce Racing, for all the setup work of the team. Put together a great car, and happy to keep showing off the new livery this way, and got my homework cut out for me for next time.
Hell yeah, well hopefully we're talking to you again, maybe on the top setup of the podium next week.
Yeah, thanks guys.
And next up, we'll bring in second place finisher Sam Karasala. Unfortunately, you had nothing for Ted Burns, but neither did anybody. You still ran away from the field over 10 seconds ahead of Carl Emkuhl. Man, that car just looked like it was on rails tonight. I couldn't point out one flaw you made tonight.
Was that when I nearly hit T1 and then took me 3-4 corners to control my car again?
I must have missed that. Maybe we can forget about that. Other than that, it was a perfect race for you.
Yeah, I'm very happy with it. Ted, yeah, like you said, I had nothing really for him. Same with Everett. He was really fast. I got a bit lucky. He crashed near the fountain halfway through. And then Carter and Hazelworth got together by the end of lap 1. So not much for me to do except try not to crash, but I'm very happy with the result.
When you find yourself in a race like that, where it seems like the guys in front of you are absolutely running away, you're running away from the guys behind, does it almost just become like a time trial session? Are you going out there trying to hit fast lap after fast lap, or are you just trying to keep it in one place and kind of just guarantee yourself that second position?
Well, I've wrecked myself out of 2 really good IndyCar finishes this week, hitting the walls at Long Beach, so I wasn't in a mood to make it a third time. So I was just really going easy. And especially when these races split, there's not much in the way of lap traffic. So it was a pretty lonely race for me the whole way through.
It's almost when you need to have a radio close by. You put the tunes on, set the cruise control, and just drive till you see the checkered flag.
Exactly.
Well, why don't we get some of your sponsor plugs, thank yous in? Who you want to shout out tonight?
Thanks to you guys for broadcasting. Always love to see it. Looking forward to your internet upgrade in August.
Absolutely. I think everyone at home was hoping for that. Fortunately, I don't think we hit 30 frames at all tonight. Unfortunately, abysmal performance by my ISP. I won't name and shame them. They've promised to make it better in August. If it's not, then we can name and shame them.
Well, and besides that, thanks to Team Watson Racing for making a good setup tonight.
Oh yeah, well thanks for coming out. Hopefully we're talking to you on the top step next week. And last but certainly not least, it's the man who absolutely showed everyone how it's done tonight. It's Ted Burns, finishing 6 seconds ahead of Sam Karasala, 18 seconds ahead of Carl Emkuhl, and about 15 laps ahead from the rest of the field. Man, did you spend all week long just practicing here for tonight, or is this just your lucky track?
No, I feel pretty in tune with Long Beach. I haven't been on the sim in 2 weeks. I just logged on, I think it was 2 hours ago. I was telling Sam for the first time in the last 2 weeks. So it's been Yeah, so it's been a little bit getting back up to speed, but I love Long Beach, so was able to do a couple laps, but it's a couple degrees warmer this season than when we were here last season, so the grip was a little bit lower and the car was really sliding, so we had to make a couple little changes in the setup, but dialed it in, and it was fast and it felt pretty good, and it was just a race of attrition out there tonight.
Hell yeah. So is Long Beach like your Nürburgring? Like some people are Nürburgring junkies and they can just hop in any car and just they're incredibly fast. Is Long Beach that track for you?
I think so. I think it just fits my driving style well because it's you got to be very precise, keep it within the walls, but work on your exits is huge and not pushing the entries too much because there's no time to gain and a lot to lose. So I think I just carry that same mindset to any track I go to, but it really shines on the street courses. So like here and Detroit, and yeah, it's crazy how many of these bumps I have memorized by now. But so it's it's a fun one. I do enjoy Long Beach.
Well, hell yeah, man. Why don't we get some of your sponsor plugs, thank yous in? Maybe even thank the Port of Long Beach for keeping this track open for you.
Yeah, for sure. Got to thank Downforce Racing. Awesome to see Carl come up here in a big strength of field up onto the podium. He was helping me a bit. We were looking at some data and a couple changes right before the race, so that was a huge help. Thanks to you guys for putting on an awesome broadcast. I love watching it. I had all the friends and family watching back home. And thanks to everyone for coming out and racing. It's awesome. We could get some real-life Indy Pro drivers out here tonight and, 2 splits. So that's awesome to see. Hopefully we can have that every week.
Hell yeah, that would be the absolute goal. So why don't we all get out there on the Reddit, on the forums, and see how many drivers we can absolutely pack into these races. But that's all. That's going to be all for Ted here tonight. You have a great night, and hopefully we're talking again on the Top Spot next week.
Yeah, thanks. I'll actually be back, I think, in 2 weeks. I'm on the road next week for work, so see you guys in 2 weeks then.
Oh, man, 2 weeks. Who's going to take the top spot next week? Well, James, absolutely fantastic race out here at Long Beach, as always. What are some of your thoughts on what you saw here tonight?
I saw the talent level of this field put on absolute display. Hardly any major incidents, just a lot of good, clean racing. Tyler Lundy being an absolute Chad and finishing with a car that had no rear wing for almost the entirety of the race. It was just an absolute show put on by everybody.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic racing out of the whole field tonight, and frankly, gets me even more excited for the real-world Long Beach Grand Prix that I believe is happening this weekend. I have not kept up with IndyCar, but
You are correct.
I know what I'm doing this Sunday. I don't know about all the rest of you, but that's going to be it for us on the air, folks. Thank you very much for tuning in, and hopefully we're talking again next week. On Monday, we'll be back with Silver Crowns. Hopefully we'll have Chris Graham back on the call for that one with some better internet out of Philadelphia versus what we have here in the great state of Ohio, Buckeye State, not known for its internet, known for its corn. Thank you very much for tuning in, and you all have a fantastic night.